Hey all, here OS Reviews. Now as we're diving into holiday season, there's a slew of new announces from various tech brands, including one more. Today we're checking out their newest Aero TWS True Wireless Buds. So it's a mid-range pair that's a little cheaper than what Soundcore's Liberty 4s and the AirPods and Bose of the world are selling at. These do pack quite a few interesting features, namely they also support spatial audio, which is a trend that we also saw introduced with the aforementioned Liberty 4s from Soundcore just a few weeks ago. Seems to be a feature that more brands are trying to experiment with. So there is a built-in gyroscope that can track your head as you're tilting it left and right, and as a result, it will be able to tweak the music to sound like it's coming from one side versus the other. They pack in active noise cancellation, as well as built-in audio transparency, some of their custom EQ modes that they have tuned with additional sound engineers, along with Qi wireless charging. So pretty promising set of features. Some additional remarks, they're IPX5 rated, so they will be splash proof for rain, and they have fast charging, so about 5 minutes of charging will get you up to 3 hours of playback time, very lightweight at less than 5 grams per side. And in terms of battery life, they will last for around 7 hours of continuous music listening, and up to 28 hours with the battery case combined. Comes in both black and white colors. Presentation is done quite well, very similar to other One More products with all the spec designs listed out. Additional packaging contents are inclusive of a Type-C charging cable, some spare silicone tips, and just a quick user guide. A closer look here at the design of the case. Overall, it's very clean, almost like an egg. What's interesting here is that the door actually opens from the front, similar to the Soundcore VR P10s that we reviewed the other day. So you can actually pop it open like this, which does look really dramatic and I have to say quite cool from a design perspective. What's also neat here is that the bottom tips of the buds are backlit. Here's a quick comparison with the aforementioned Soundcore VR P10s, which shares a very similar design aesthetic, I would say, but the One Mores are just a little bit larger in terms of their stem. And then here is another contrast with the Soundcore Liberty 4s, which again are a little bit more expensive, but also pack in the aforementioned spatial audio. Those models will sell for $50 to $80 more, and they also have LDAC certification for high-res audio through Bluetooth, whereas these ones are lacking the hi-fi certification, but again, provide you still with a pretty full set of features aside from that codec. Now inside, very clean, and we have just the buds themselves, which like I said, very familiar compared to some of their other buds that we've seen recently with a streamlined design that has the touch controls on the front, which are quite responsive, and then on the back here, mesh of the speaker, which you can tell here is accented in red, looks quite dramatic, and there's also a proximity sensor that can detect if you're wearing them or not to automatically play and pause the music. Overall, it's a good wearing experience, doesn't feel too loose, but also light enough that you can wear continuously for a couple of hours without noticing really any stress or strain. One More's companion app remains quite similar to before, but you're able to take a look at the battery percentage on the buds as well as the case, ANC, and audio transparency effects. However, the strength of both of these modes can't be further controlled. We'll talk about the efficacy later on in our video. Under custom settings, you can remap what a double tap and a triple tap will correspond to, including play pause, as well as other things like volume controls you can all bring back, and it is quite easy to use. We also have the ability to optimize something called smart loudness, depending on the audio track that you're listening to, what the optimal sound in terms of volume output should be, which is quite neat. Although again, this particular collaboration doesn't extend to a personalized hearing EQ mode. Take a look at some preset EQs this time around, including 12 ones that are built from One More in collaboration with some of their Grammy Award-winning artists as advisors. So you're able to go into a default mode, which already sounds quite good, but you can further tweak into a bass boost, reduce acoustic, pop, hip-hop, vocal, podcast modes per your liking if you're listening to different genres, and it does make a noticeable difference, which is great to find on here. Under custom EQ, you can also change the sliders here of different frequency ranges. Aside from firmware updates, you have just the spatial audio mode, which on here you can just turn on and turn off, and by default, whenever you flick it on, it will be calibrated to your current position. The sound will seem like it's being emitted from in front of you, and if you tilt your head to the left, now your right ear will be able to hear a bigger sound versus your left side will become a lot more dampened. The vice versa if you turn to the right side, and it's actually quite a convincing effect. In fact, I would say the strength and the overall efficacy is similar to the aforementioned Liberty 4s. Some critics might say that perhaps the best effect is still reached using properly recorded spatial tracks, versus on here it's really just more dynamic depending on your position of moving your head and where you are in the room, but it still is incredibly fun to play with. It does make it seem like you are in that live environment. Granted, I felt like turning my head up and down, like nodding, didn't really make too much of a noticeable difference. So I feel like the tuning of spatial audio from One More, it's more about the left and right side positioning, versus with Soundcore, it gives you a little bit more of an up and down movement as well. But all in all, really not bad, and it does provide you with a little more immersiveness, at least in my opinion. Of course, you don't have to always use this function, but on certain tracks, it still is a nice feature to find. Now finally, you can tap on the One More logo here and turn on some additional settings, including soothing sounds. So this is their equivalent of nature sounds to help you fall asleep or meditate, and you can find a handful of those options, including fire sounds, rain sounds, settings for turning on and off the autoplay and pause, as well as a smart burn-in mode, which again is a theory that is more rooted in audiophile, kind of the hi-fi community, in that the speakers on any driver will sound their best after X hours of sound has been played through them. So out of the factory, you can play back around 8 hours of this low frequency, mid frequency, and high frequency noises for the drivers to kind of be fully woken up. Moving into audio quality and performance next, I would say that the pure sound quality of the One More Arrows are quite good, although I wouldn't say, again, they're necessarily hi-fi grade, but at the same time, they are very dynamic, packing in sufficient bass that when you're listening to a drum beat, EDM, or rock music, it gives you a nice punch without being too overpowering. It's definitely present, and at the same time, clear enough mids and trebles that it still immerses you in the music that you're listening to. Overall, TWS wireless bud market has become a lot more mature over the past, I would say, year or so. These days, it's kind of hard to find a pair that sounds downright bad. Differences are much more minute going from one to the other. Though I will say that they are lacking a low latency gaming mode per se, so that's one thing that they could probably add in the future. Now, in terms of active noise cancellation efficacy, this is another area which I feel like these are comparable to some of their recent buds, which is not bad. So things like engine sounds, fan noises, lower frequency sounds are to a great extent diminished, and you don't have to crank the volume quite as high to listen to your music, which is great. They're not going to necessarily match one-to-one what Bose and Sony will deliver in terms of some of the higher frequency sounds, but still it's obvious in terms of the difference when you flick it on, and I do feel like they are good enough for the price point. If you were trying to get introduced to One More, you're looking for a relatively affordable pair of buds that has solid sound, a clean, attractive design that's comfortable to wear, and a pretty rich set of features, then this is definitely one that is, I think, worth taking a closer look at this holiday season. You can check out more details if interested, but for now that's been my video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the One More Arrows.